Hi, so today we'll be starting with a new topic mentioned in your syllabus. From the theory portion on biological anthropology, there's a unit where we'll be starting about human diversity, human variation. There are concepts associated with the racial classification, human variation, diversity, ethnicity, and the features of a population. So, one by one, we'll be taking everything forward. For this, we'll be starting or we'll be referring the EPG document because, in a way, it's quite comprehensive and most of the definitions and the information, the basic information, is quite consolidated in these documents. So, we'll be referring to them. Apart from that, I'll be also sharing few of the essential reading material, so you can go through that. Okay, so first and the foremost thing in this document, it's emphasizing on the concept of race. The pioneers of different disciplines who have come up giving different classifications for, or how to categorize different populations or say different races, how this concept of race as such is different from racism, right? Then we have different ethnic identities, different ethnic groups. How are they classified? What is the geographical model, the population model? All of these are quite extensively discussed in this document. So one by one, we'll be taking everything forward. So firstly, let's start with the concept of race itself. Now, the first and foremost thing when we talk about race, the way one perceives this concept, it's quite varied. But being anthropologists or when we're studying human populations, there are few physical characteristics that we observe, and also we try to relate with the cultural setup of the particular community we are studying. So physically, or say anthropologically or morphologically, if we say, the human groups, or within one community, there is a different observations that you can make with respect to, let's say, their skin color or their stature, the features of their hairs, nose, then their eyebrows. More or less, we have covered all of this basic introduction in somatoscopy, if you could remember that, right? So more or less, these features are different in different communities depending on definitely the genes, but that gene again has specific inheritance pattern which is observed at the population level, or at the community level, or say at ethnic, at the level of the affinity that the person has with the entire community, right? So more or less, when we talk about all these features, we attempt to understand this physical variation and their underlying reasons. Now, reasons are more or less exploratory as well as explanatory. So if there could be a certain question, like for example, there's a prevalence of certain recessive gene which is causing a recessive disorder in a population, so there has to be an explanatory reason for that. Exploratory reasons could be, in a way, some form of ethnic affiliations, or say migratory routes of a community. They have traveled across different geographical areas, and now they're settled in a position where at point they would have undergone genetic drifts or mutation or any form of natural event. So that could be one of the exploratory reason of having certain physical variation within one community or across different communities, right? So in a way, we are trying to understand these variations by identifying the reasons behind that, right? But in the classic literature of anthropology or history or philosophy, there has been quite evident talks about these human physical variations. For example, Herodotus, Hippocrates, Aristotle, all of these scholars have attributed this variation to majorly the environmental factors, right? If you could recall, there has been in the science, in the the discipline of epidemiology, we start with a black box paradigm, then we landed gradually to the environmental factors, then there was one gene, one disease sort of relation, right? And then we have the confounding factors theory. So attributing the variation to merely environmental factors was in one of the phases of this evolution of attributing the reasons of certain thing happening in the community or in at the population level. So these variations were attributed by these scholars to the environmental factors. For example, it mentions the reason behind the Egyptians' thicker skull compared to that of Persians. Herodotus had stated that the Egyptians have shaved the heads of their children and let them go hatless in the sun, while the Persians, they used to cover the heads of their children, right? So that was one reason. It was not, it was not entirely environmental, but also one in a way cultural factor. The way their family used to shave the heads of their children and then let them go hatless in the sun, completely exposing their heads, the shaved heads in the sun. So that was one reason of having a thicker skull in the Egyptians as compared to Persians. Similarly, another example as cited by Hippocrates, he suggested that men with a very long and thin sort of physique are quite more susceptible to TB, and those who are having shorter and thick stature or physique are predisposed to vascular problems. So that was again one of the attribute, because here we did not have any scientific evidence to relate what could be the genetic or say the factor or the agent causing TB at that point of time. So it was merely the environmental reasons that they tried to relate it to, right? Then in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, gradually there was the era of exploration where people did come up with their theories, with their evidences, more scientific in nature. And gradually, when we talk in terms of the racial classification, more or less there were scholars who were trying to now classify the population into certain categories, the racial categories, based on their physical characteristics. Then from 18th century onwards, at the end or towards the termination of era of exploration, or the shift from the era of exploration to the next phase, anthropologists were quite more interested to study these physical variations, and then on that basis they were making efforts to classify the entire population of the world into different categories, which they termed it as race. So here was the initial terminological evidence that we can find of categorization of populations into a label which is called as race. The term race was first used by Buffon, a French naturalist, in the 18th century. So this could be used for your UGC NET exam, so you can keep a note of it. Then over the period of time, we'll see quite physical observations or physical traits were readily observable. If you could recall, relate with the somatoscopy practical, we can see most of the categorizations of say skin color, nationally also internationally, the categorizations were quite evident by 18th century. So stature, skin color, hair forms, body physique, all of these were now having certain evidences being generated from different geographical areas of the world. So now we can give a comparative account across different geographies or say different populations belonging to different geographical locations. So these observations were now coming up more evidently. right? And a very important name also comes of Blumenbach. He was a German scientist who first classified the world population into 5 varieties, primarily on the basis of the skin color. So a very important, a very significant name in the history of physical anthropology, or say physiological anthropology. His classification was the first one based on the skin color of the community. So he gave the classification, which was categorized into 5: the Caucasian or the white populations. White population indicating the people belong to Europe, West Asia, Central Asia. The second one being Mongolian, or labeled as yellow race, specifically from the areas of Tartary, China, Japan. Then the third category was Ethiopians, or the black race, which occupied most of the Africa except the North Africa. So along with Africa, people from Australia, New Guinea and other Pacific islands. Then there were Americans, or commonly called red race, comprising the Indians of North and South American population. And then there were Malayans, or the brown race, which occupies the islands of the Indian archipelago, right? So this was it's very important that these classifications need to be remembered. In subsequent classes, we'll be also talking about Houghton's classification, Deniker's classification, Guha's classification, which are quite used in the current terminologies also. So that will be coming up in the subsequent sessions. After that, more or less, more of these scholars were coming up with their own observations. They were giving up their own categorizations. And now, for example, here we have the main races. Later on, scholars started giving the names of the races and also the sub-races. So they were quite distinguished now. For example, in 1889, this name, Deniker, it's a very important name. We'll be studying the classification in detail. He proposed to divide the humanity into 29 races according to their hair form, nose form and the skin color as the secondary traits, right? So based on their hair forms, and then subsequent categorizations, or the primary trait being the hair form and the secondary trait being the nose and the skin color, right? So that was again one different way of categorizing the population. Similarly, there were other scholars like Dixon, Heddon, Houghton. Houghton's classification is one of the most cited one. They later on started using the quantitative traits. Now when we see from somatoscopic observations, now here people were scholars were trying to make more anthropometric measurements, or the basis of classification was now shifting to more quantitative traits, like say stature, the indexes of the head length and head breadth, or say nasal indexes, nasal breadth divided by nasal length, or say nasal height. These were again associated with the somatoscopic traits, but the primary criteria became the anthropometric measurements. Fine, more quantitative traits, and secondary being the qualitative or the somatoscopic measurements, observations. Fine, so now this was becoming the way of categorizing the populations. Then now there are different models in studying the populations, or say in a way trying to categorize the races of globally. So first model, there are two models discussed here. First is the population model, and second one is the Klinel model. Okay, so we'll be taking one by one. Before that, let me provide you a few of the definitions which are quite relevant when we're talking or introducing ourselves about the concept of race, and also how is it different from the concept of racism. Okay, we'll be taking it secondary. Very importantly, there are few important definitions you need to understand, or say memorize, whatever is convenient for you. Some definitions on races come up in the mid of 20th century, which were viewed from an evolutionary perspective, with an assumption about the role of geographic distribution in race formation, and secondary to the importance of breeding populations in forming a collection of traits which sets the groups apart. So very pioneer names, if you come across these in the 20th century, were Houghton, Dobinsky and Garn. In their definitions, they mention about these breeding or Mendelian populations which can change in time and are not like watertight compartments. For example, when we take Houghton's definition, he tried to define race as a group whose members present individually identical combinations of specific physical characters that they owe to their common descent. Okay, let me repeat it again. A group whose members present individually identical combinations of specific physical characters which are owing to the common descent. Now, common descent as in they can trace back to an ancestor, right? So the physical characteristics are quite hereditary in nature. There are few specific combinations which are individual and identical within that population who have a common descent. So that is what it try to imply upon as a definition of race, who have a common ancestor and who have individual or say identical determinants of the physical traits. On the other hand, Dobinsky in 1944, he defined races as populations which are differing in the incidence of certain genes but actually exchanging or potentially able to exchange the genes across whatever boundaries separate them. He further added that race differences are objectively ascertainable facts. The number of races we choose to recognize is a matter of convenience. So basically, he implies that based on certain genes that could differ between populations, but still because of certain affinities, although they are separated by boundaries, by geography, they still have that ability, or they are potentially able, is the phrase that he uses. They're actually exchanging, or they're potentially able to exchange those genes across the boundaries that separate them. Fine. The third definition, very important definition, is of Boyd. He defined race as a population which differs significantly from other populations in regard to frequency of one or more genes it possesses. So entire attribute is towards the genetic orientation of the population. The two populations could be easily distinguished based on their genetic identities. It is an arbitrary manner which and how many gene loci we choose to consider a significant constellation. Right, so depending on the scholar that are trying to study the gene or the genetic identity, the how which the amount or the cluster of genes at specific loci, as he says it as a constellation, entirely depends on population to population. How clustered are you trying to study a gene at a given locus of the gene, right? So that was the definition. So what you can do is you can go through these three important definitions. There are other definitions that you can just read it for your understanding, but more or less if a question or a long type question is asked, you're expected to write few of the contrasting definitions that imply on the holistic understanding of race. So the other definitions you can go through is Mayer, Bakers and Bruce. Very simple to understand, you can go through it. The second concept is associated with the idea of racism. Now, racism basically, it's a belief system. It's based on the false belief that there are certain factors such as intellect or other cultural attributes, their morality, their values, which are inherited along with one's physical characteristics, be it skin color, nose form, their hair color, whatever be it. So that assumption that one physical trait or say one cultural attribute is superior to the other one, that belief system is how you understand racism. Okay, so there are different misconceptions around study of races, that in a way we are trying to see which is good, which is not. That is not the approach. That should not be the approach. In fact, being anthropologist, either you are studying from social cultural point of view or biological point of view, the role is very important, because the idea is not to see the inferior superior features or the good bad features, but to see the specifics of one population. How is it different from the other population? Contrasting the two rather than comparing the two. That should be the approach. That should be the instrumental approach of the anthropologist when we're studying these communities. Fine. So that is one of the basic idea. Again, in 1951, considering all these backdrops, misconceptions around racism and stuff like that, there was an approach or say initiative by UNESCO. They drafted a statement which was taken up by different scholars from different disciplines like anthropology, genetics, and different disciplines. So they set out a statement. The statement was, the concept of race is unanimously regarded by anthropologists as a classificatory device providing a zoological framework within which the various groups of mankind may be arranged. Not compared, not inferior superior, not good and bad, nothing like that. In a way, arranging or say studying those groups. That was the whole intent. One of the another pioneer name which comes in the study of races, or while we are studying the concept of race, is Ashley Montagu. He was a student of Franz Boas and Ruth Benedict, and one of the first scientists who made an attempt to argue against the concept of race. Okay. Yeah, more or less this is about the concept of racism. Now coming on to two different models of studying race or racial communities. The first model is the population model. Now population model, basically it's based on, as it says, it's a premise of evolutionary principle. Now in simplistic terms, if I have to say, population, within the population, the interbreeding, so we can say a breeding population, have more or less similar genetic, or they are genetically identical because of longer duration of mating within the population, within the same community, or within some ethnic affinities of that community, of a person, of a family. So mating happening within an ethnic group or a larger population, enclosed based on certain cultural attributes. Within them, the mating happens, and because of that, over the period of time, they have accumulated a genetically identical composition, which serves a basis of understanding different populations, or comparing, or say having a contrasting picture of say genetic picture of one population and the genetic picture of the other population, and similarly going associating it with the cultural attributes also. So as it says, this model conceives that people whose ancestors have more or less exclusively mated with each other over long period of time will show great similarity with each other, because the members of the breeding population would be expected to share many genetically inherited traits and to have a similar appearance. So because of a specific mating pattern, because of breeding population and sharing a genetic pool, they have similar physiological appearance, which indicates, or it's an attribute of a population, right? So this is how you understand the population model. Now the concept of geographical race, or say a local race, is ultimately the outcome of this understanding or this premise of evolutionary principle, because with respect to geography, how you identify, how you study population is, a small group of people which are separated by boundaries or by geography. So this is how you study a population, say population A, population B. So based on certain geographical limitations and the closeness of the group, or say a genetic pool of that group, you can say this is population A and this being the population B. So geography is a very key trait of defining a population. So therefore when we say geographical race, therefore it's an outcome, or say a subset of the population model or the understanding of population model. And similarly the idea of local races. Fine. Now on this model, most of the classifications that we're going to take up in the subsequent sessions, specifically by Garn, Kuhn, Burchell, they classified using these the understanding or the premise of population model. So Garn divided the world population into 9 geographical races, and later on Kuhn and Burchell, they made a finer subdivision of 30 local races, which Garn has modified to 32 and Dobzhansky later modified to 34. Fine. The document specifies the idea of local race as a breeding population adapted to local selection pressures. Local selection pressures as in either it could be natural selection, genetic drift, mutation, whatnot, and maintained by either natural or social barriers to gene interchange. So that is how you understand local race, or a similar context to geographical race. The second concept or the second model that we'll be taking up is the Klinel model. Now, as the literature says, by 1950s, there were scholars who were now able to generate a large genetic database, because as we will study in other the later semesters, or perhaps you would have come across in physical anthropology, the significant evidences generated in the field of biological anthropology, or say in terms of DNA technology, genetic studies, happened a lot around 1950s. So genetic understanding, forensic anthropology, they have their initial phases during this time. So a large genetic database was generated for human groups across the globe, which laid the premise of Klinel model more accurately, because it is one of the model compared to the population model. This is more accurate in reflecting the nature of biological variations among human beings. It is one of the first model which did not attempt to compartmentalize human populations into distinct groups. Okay, it says that closer the spatial distance between the human groups, the chance of mating with the neighboring groups increases compared to the ones who are distantly placed. Therefore, people whose ancestors have lived close to ours for many generations are more likely to share genetically inherited traits with us compared to people who live further away. So it says two populations living together, perhaps not intermixing, but with time, because of their geographical affinities or being closely located, perhaps they have common they have different descents who perhaps could have similar at one point of time. So this represents one population as compared to, say, these populations which are located far away. Similar model. Fine. Now let's not take D, let's take R and S. It goes back to, let's say, T. So this is quite distantly located. So now affinity between A and B is more closer as compared to A and R, right? And therefore the association between D and T is therefore quite distant. They are very far away genetically, geographically obviously, but genetically quite far away. So therefore what it says, closer the spatial distance between the human groups, closer the distance between A and B, there is a higher or increased chance of mating within the group and also between the neighboring groups. Therefore it increases this location increases the chance of having this intermixed mating between two populations which are located quite closer as compared to populations which are located very far away, right? So therefore we can find a more shared genetically inherited trait because of, say, having a common ancestry or located closely. That could be the reason. So that inherited genetic trait is identical here as compared to here and here. Fine. This is what is the idea of clinal model. The model states that genetically inherited traits most often gradually change in frequency from one geographical area to another. Quite obvious. Therefore, one can find different frequency zones or clines for a particular genetic trait. For example, here it mentions with respect to the blood group. So the frequency of B blood allele, it increases from Southeast and Northeast Asia to Central Asia. Within this more or less continuous cline, there are isolated pockets of relatively low B allele frequency. Therefore, the distribution of this genetically inherited trait appears to be mostly clinal, but in part is also discontinuous. So because they are closely related, though patches of discontinuity appears, but still you can see that because they are, geographic wise they are placed together or as a neighbor, so that attribute is reflected in the allele frequency of the blood group. Fine. Although these patches some create some sort of discontinuity or discontinuous events, but more or less it appears to be a cline. When we were discussing about neighbors located together, here also if you will see, if something is located here and you have discontinuous pattern, or say here, then probably you have higher chances of intermixing, breeding, or say that ways. So it does not create that much of a difference, right? So this is what it tries to imply through this example, and you can cite again, this example is very important, you can cite it in your writing. So this was the introductory part for the understanding of race, racism, and ethnic affiliations and different models of studying races. In the next class, we'll be taking up different classifications of race, specifically with respect to Hutens, Denikas, Risley, and Guha. Okay, we'll be taking it forward. Your questions you can feel free to ask. Fine. Thank you.